Hello, and here we are. We're going to talk about Gluster Think this Friday. Today is the 15th of February, and we want to talk about something interesting. Quite something that the larger Gluster community doesn't probably pay a lot of attention to, but it's an exciting part of the intersect between Gluster and the Overt project. We have Govinda and Sahina today who are going to walk us through in terms of what's happening, what's coming up. There's a whole lot of work happening, and this is as good a time to get introduced, get updated, and participate. So, Govinda and Sahina, welcome. All yours.
Thank you, Sankarshan. I'll start off and then hand over to Govinda. So I just wanted to introduce Overt for those who don't know it. Overt is a virtualization platform. We have been integrating Gluster management into Overt for quite some time now. I think since 2012, we've had some amount of integration of Gluster management in Overt. But recently, since Overt 4.0, we have also introduced the hyperconverged offering, where compute and storage runs hyperconverged on the same nodes. So one of the primary motivation for introducing this was the Gluster sharding feature, which enabled improvements in heal and recovery for the very large disk images that are typically associated with Overt deployments. So ever since the sharding feature came along in Gluster, we added more tight integration into Overt, where you have your Gluster volumes, and with a single click you can provision it as storage domains to store your VM images. One of the things that we wanted to improve upon is also the deployment, because there are multiple projects involved here, and typically deployment takes quite a lot of time and knowledge, the inner workings, so to speak, of each of the products. So we wanted to make it really easy for end user to deploy. So there are two flavors of deployment. There is a single node hyperconverged deployment, where you can have the entire stack running on one server. There's also the 3-node deployment, which works on a Gluster replica 3 or replica 2 plus arbiter. So the 3-node deployment provides high availability and all of the rich features that Overt has, everything with no other additional infrastructure that you need to maintain. Everything is on your 3 servers with Gluster. So the way we did the deployment is using Cockpit and Ansible, and Govinda has been heavily involved in this effort and doing this. So I will hand over to him to explain how we made the deployment much easier.
Thanks, Saina. Thanks, Sankarshan. Hello, everyone. As Saina mentioned, we simplify the deployment flow using Cockpit. So Cockpit is a it's a good-looking UI tool or plugin which gives you the facility to develop faster things in UI side using React. So Cockpit itself, interact with server from browser itself. That's the beauty of Cockpit. You can execute any command, server-side command from UI itself. So we use Cockpit UI for deployment UI, and earlier we used gdeploy as a deployment tool, which is a wrapper of Ansible. So now we are going to replace gdeploy with Ansible role. We have Gluster Ansible roles, which will do the all the necessary things which is required for cluster deployment and a hyperconverged deployment, like creating PV, LVs, thin pool, LVM KC, and also the cluster volumes. Also the creating bricks and mounting those and creating storage domain, blah blah.
Right.
So
So,
this
so
is
I heard you saying that you're going to replace gdeploy with Gluster Ansible, and the Gluster Ansible comes with roles that are quite oriented and towards all the day one flows that is required, and those kind of neatly integrate with Cockpit. Uh, which which is the release at which you are planning this change, and the users can look forward to that?
yeah. So the patches are already merged and it's in track for release. So we targeted for 4.3.1.
That'd be over at 4.3.1, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Uh, so for those who, I think the Gluster community would be well aware of gdeploy, but Gluster Ansible roles. This is pretty much where every project which is trying to integrate or built in day one, day two flows, that's where it's going, right? It's ensuring that there are roles, specific roles that are well scoped out and are being able to integrate better using Ansible, which is now fairly the administrators, all system administrators are well aware of it, they're skilled in it. Uh, what else is happening in the overt cluster hyperconverged project? What should we be looking out for?
So from deployment perspective, this the things, and there is the deployment flows goes into two parts. You have uh, cluster deployment section, and once your cluster deployment succeeded, then you'll see the hosted engine deployment. So hosted engine deployment is nothing but you are configuring and installing your overt uh, overt service. So it will create the VM and it will install the overt service. Then after finished all the deployments, you will able to manage. You will able to see the RevM UI, which is the overt UI basically. From there, you can manage your cluster completely. Like you can create brick, you can create storage domains, volumes. You can so after that the aim is to create the VMs. So after that you can create the VMs, which will be stored in Gluster basically.
Okay. So
Apart, oh, sorry, Krishnan, if I may add, apart
yeah.
from the deployment enhancements, we are also working towards OK native support, which we did not have in Overt. So I think a lot of customers and a lot of users have complained that they are not being able to use the new age disk since Overt requires that the disk allows 512 byte writes. So this is a feature that we wanted to enable for a long time in the hyperconverged environment. So that is coming up soon. I think it may be delayed. It may not make it to 4.3.1 since there are some dependencies, but we are working towards that.
Right. This is good stuff. I I would like both of you to sort of put out also a detail about where interested users can go and find the builds. And I'm guessing uh, you wouldn't be totally upset if more and more people use this and give you feedback, because that's what this is all about, right? The
Of
projects.
course, we want more people to try this out. And we do have a nice guide that we have written up in the OVERT website. The link is pasted. Probably we can add it to the notes. So that goes through the entire deployment flow. And there are multiple blogs that people have written that handholds users through deployment.
And the primary upstream mailing list where a lot of these conversations happen is the overt projects mailing list, right?
Yes, that is right. But I think when there are Gluster problems, we do add the Gluster users mailing list too. We have seen a lot of problems with the Gluster 5 release, which we are trying to address in the 4.3.1 overt release, hopefully with an update in Gluster 5.
Okay, so there are challenges in the currently available Gluster release, which is Gluster 5, which is causing user experience issues.
Yeah, I think we have had a spurt of issues with the latest 4.3 release where we upgraded from Gluster 3.12 to Gluster 5. So some of it, I think some of it was a libvirt issue too, but there are other issues with Gluster crashing and the mount crashing. I think this is being worked on by the Gluster developers. Forward to the fixes soon.
Thank you for giving us a quick roundup of what's happening and what we can look forward to. And I really thank both of you for making time on a Friday evening to join us. I'll post the links that are there into the show notes, and hopefully we're going to see a bunch of more issues and more testing by the users who are interested in picking this up.
For having us, Kishan.
The users also, we have also video integration, so user can try video things, and that will be interesting. They can try and check.
Right. That's a piece I completely forgot mentioning. Neat. Right. So with that, I'll move on to other things. There's not specifically a lot of things to talk about today, but a couple of neat things that have happened over the weekend, or rather the end of the week. There has been an announcement sent out to the mailing list by Amar about the GCS RC. I'll post the link to that once we post this show. The note is basically a call for help. There's a bunch of things that needs to be checked out. We are looking for users to be how things happen in this current release. The key part that Amar is looking forward to help is that the GCS release uses the CSI spec 1.0, which is available only for Kubernetes 1.13, 1.13. And hence there's a need to test this thing and shake out any bugs that have happened. There's a link to meetings that are there on the GCS group, which happens at every Thursday. There's a bunch of notes about a kubectl Gluster piece that Aravinda has been working on that's kind of does what an operator is supposed to do, because GCS doesn't have an operator yet, in case you have not been following. There's also a call for help to build out the website, and believe it or not, yes, GCS is going to have a separate sub website of its own. So that's one good part happening. And teeing up from there, one of the things that I'm going to do next week is try and get Ravi Shankar and Ashish to talk to us more about the thin-arbiter feature as well. So that's teed up for next week. This week, the other thing that I'd like to point out is that we are going to have try and get Nitya next week to talk about a bug that's a fix that she's put in to help fix a race condition between self-heal. It's fairly tricky, has been hitting a bunch of users, so we'll talk a bit about that as well. Now, I see Sham's on the call too, and a quick check to Sham if there's anything you want to share about the upcoming Gluster 6 release, because I know it's been on going through cycles of testing. There's been bugs and issues, and if you have something to add.
Right. Thanks, Shankaran. So Gluster 6, we are actually hoping to build out the RC0 next week. That'll be out for testing, and we'd really like the community to actually take it and test it a bit, especially in the overt case, which is what the discussion's been around today, so that we avoid surprises down the line. Also, with release 6, there has been some performance benchmarking work that showed initial bad numbers, and then we've identified root causes. more on that on the list. And one other thing is that with release 6, we actually have a series of Gluster APIs, GF APIs that are changing. So a call out has gone on Gluster Devel list to ensure dependent projects catch up. So in short, expect an RC0 next week for release 6 and probably a release 3 weeks from then if there are no surprises.
Cool. Well, I won't envy you. You are at between a rock and a hard place. We were almost ready to get 6 through the door, and then there's a bunch of issues that you're wrangling through it. So let's see how everything rolls out next week, and I look forward to the RC emails on the list. And probably next week, if it happens before the Friday, we can talk a bit about it as well during this. Okay, and thank you again, all of you, for joining. I'll post the show along with the notes. Do share, retweet, use whatever social media that you like to spread this around. And we'll look forward to feedback on this. Leave a comment on our podcast on YouTube, on the Gluster users list, in the community. Tweet to our Twitter handle, which is @Gluster. So at Gluster. So we'll look forward to all of that. Thank you again.
Thank you.